America's quietest adversary, Washington, as ever, is busy watching the horizon for dragons. Chinese shipyards disgorge more gray hulls than any peacetime navy in history. Russia rattles nuclear sabers while turning the Donbass into a munitions testing range. Iran, a perennial hobbyist of regional chaos, flicks matches at oil infrastructure. The global map fills itself with arrows and shaded danger zones, giving national security officials a comforting sense of clarity. Threats, after all, are easier to manage when they wear uniforms, but America's most consequential adversary wears none. It marches under no flag, deploys no aircraft carrier, and requires no elaborate intelligence briefing. It simply accumulates, quietly, relentlessly, and in full public view. This adversary is federal debt, now hovering around 100% of GDP and rising inexorably toward levels that even great powers find strategically deforming. It will not conquer a city or sink a warship. It will do something more subtle, slowly smother the United States' ability to act like the superpower it still believes itself to be. Strategic gravity. For decades, America behaved as if fiscal gravity were a trivial inconvenience, something that happened to lesser states. Wars were fought on credit, crises were managed with temporary budget exceptions that somehow became permanent, structural reforms were postponed until a more convenient decade. Washington discovered that voters enjoy low taxes, congressmen enjoy high spending, and both can be delivered simultaneously provided someone else, preferably someone not yet born, picks up the tab. The bill for that civic enchantment has now arrived. Interest payments are nearing the size of the Pentagon's entire budget, an astonishing milestone, though one that elicits surprisingly little alarm. Strategic planners obsess over hypersonic missiles, few spare a sentence to the reality that more money is being spent servicing past decisions than financing present deterrence. Debt does not cause strategic collapse. It does something more insidious, it narrows the space in which strategy can exist. A state drowning in obligations does not choose between desirable options, it chooses which necessities it can afford to neglect. As Dr. Andrew Latham puts it, debt becomes strategic gravity. Gravity does not break a state. It merely ensures that every movement is slower, costlier, and increasingly constrained. Hollow strength. The American armed forces will not suddenly wither. Aircraft carriers will continue to patrol the Pacific, brigades will continue to rotate through Poland, and the Pentagon will continue to present thick budgets, glossy brochures, and reassuring PowerPoints. Yet beneath the surface the strain is unmistakable. Modern militaries are expensive to build but even more expensive to sustain. Precision munitions require stockpiles. Logistics chains must be hardened, not assumed. Space architectures demand constant investment. Training for high-intensity conflict is not a one-off expense, it is a perpetual one. Debt injects a perverse political economy into defense planning. Delay becomes the cheapest option, symbolism the most efficient substitute for substance. Congress happily funds big-ticket platforms, preferably ones built in several states, but hesitates to finance spare parts, munitions surges, or shipyard expansions. Long-term modernization plans stretch until they resemble geological eras. Procurement timelines move with the urgency of a drifting glacier. Thus emerges the most familiar pathology of great powers in gentle decline, a military that looks formidable on paper but loses the ability to regenerate strength at speed. In a world where China can churn out ships with industrial ruthlessness and Russia can retool its economy for wartime production, the United States risks becoming a power optimized for the wrong century. America will still outclass any single rival. But it will increasingly face the kind of choices rising debt makes unavoidable: Asia or Europe? Navy or missile defense? Forward presence or domestic resilience? No superpower enjoys asking such questions, fewer still enjoy the answers. The politics of dysfunction. Debt's strategic effects are matched only by its political ones. High debt does not encourage sobriety, it encourages partisanship. Every foreign commitment becomes a budgetary provocation. Every deployment turns into a proxy for a domestic culture war. The mere mention of foreign aid triggers televised meltdowns about fixing our own problems first, even when aid comprises a fraction of federal outlays. In theory, fiscal strain should encourage restraint, a heavily indebted state ought to prioritize, prune commitments, and husband scarce resources. In practice, restraint requires coherence, something modern Washington produces with the reliability of a 1970s Italian sports car. Instead of disciplined prioritization, America oscillates between bouts of grandiosity and abrupt retrenchment. It proclaims new doctrines, then forgets them within months. It expands alliances one year, only to question their utility the next. Adversaries do not need to defeat America, they need merely wait for its domestic politics to devour its strategic intentions. Russia is already wagering on precisely this. China, with more patience and fewer electoral cycles, relies on it. The industrial base problem, perhaps the most serious consequence of debt, is the least visible, its slow sabotage of the defense industrial base. The question that matters for modern conflict is not whether America can build exquisite platforms. It is whether it can produce them at scale, repair them quickly, and replace them under fire. On this front, the United States finds itself at a disadvantage. Manufacturing capacity has atrophied, production lines run thin, workforces age, supply chains stretch to geopolitical rivals. A system built for peacetime efficiency, just-in-time delivery, minimal redundancy, outsourcing, turns brittle under stress, debt exacerbates the rot. Faced with fiscal ceilings, lawmakers avoid long-term contracts and industrial investments, preferring annual fixes that are politically convenient and strategically useless. Factories close for lack of predictable demand, skilled labor migrates to other sectors. And the nation discovers that building a missile plant is vastly easier than staffing one. China, by contrast, plays the long game. Its defense industry enjoys state-backed certainty. If Beijing decides it needs 1,000 missiles, the factories will know it years in advance. Russia, for all its economic decrepitude, has demonstrated that mass production, crude, rapid, iterative, can offset technological inferiority. America, meanwhile, debates whether it can afford to buy enough artillery shells for two simultaneous regional crises. Great power competition is not only a contest of innovation, it is a contest of endurance. And endurance is expensive, a slow loss of strategic time. Debt is often treated as an economic problem with strategic side effects. In reality, it is a strategic problem with economic symptoms. Its principal cost is not measured in dollars but in time, the shrinking horizon within which America can shape global events. China has no need to provoke a decisive confrontation this decade. Russia, preferring attrition to blitzkrieg, measures opportunity in years. Both understand that a United States absorbed by fiscal paralysis will grow less patient, less consistent, and more reactive. As America's political bandwidth narrows, its adversaries gain room to maneuver, thus emerges the quiet danger, not collapse but a creeping inability to set the terms of global order. A superpower that spends more servicing old commitments than investing in new ones is not on the brink of bankruptcy, it is on the brink of strategic stagnation, the irony of constraint, yet all is not doom. Debt, in a paradoxical way, may also be the medicine America needs. A country accustomed to limitless aspiration may rediscover the virtues of prioritization. It may realize that not every region is equally vital, not every crisis equally urgent, and not every alliance equally beneficial. It may learn that global leadership is not measured in the number of wars one can wage simultaneously but in the coherence with which one chooses the few that matter. There is a version of American strategy, leaner, sharper, more discriminating, that debt could compel. It would focus on blunting China, deterring Russia, and avoiding the seductive distraction of peripheral conflicts. It would invest not just in platforms but in the unglamorous infrastructure of power, shipyards, ammunition plants, industrial capacity. It would align means with ends rather than ends with wishful thinking. Such a strategy is not one America has historically preferred. But great powers rarely choose the circumstances that shape them. The real question, ultimately, the contest between America, China, and Russia will not be decided in the Taiwan Strait, on the plains of eastern Ukraine, or in the halls of the UN Security Council. It will be decided in budget committees, treasury auctions, and industrial planning offices. The great battles of the coming decades will be fought not with missiles but with spreadsheets, the United States remains the world's preeminent power. Its alliances are deeper, its economy larger, and its innovative capacity unmatched. But great power primacy is not an entitlement, it is a choice. And choices require discipline. America's challenge is not whether it can outspend China or intimidate Russia. It is whether it can govern itself with enough seriousness to remain worth balancing with, and against. Debt is not a foreign adversary. It is something more intimate, a mirror held uncomfortably close. The reflection is not yet fatal. But it is no longer flattering,